Introduction. Barbara was sitting in her corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at her computer screen through tears of frustration. At 38, she was a successful marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company, earning six figures and managing a team of 12. To the outside world, she had it all together. But inside, she felt like she was drowning. Her desk was a battlefield of sticky notes, half-finished reports, and coffee cups from 3 different days. Despite working 60-hour weeks, she constantly felt behind. She'd perfected the art of last-minute brilliance, pulling all-nighters to produce presentations that wowed clients, but the cycle was killing her. She lived in constant fear that someone would discover she was a fraud, that despite her success, she felt fundamentally broken. The breaking point came during a routine performance review, when her boss mentioned her inconsistent attention to detail and suggested she might benefit from better organizational systems. That night, Barbara found herself Googling, "Why can't I focus like other people for the 100th time?" But this time, instead of productivity hacks and time management tips, she stumbled across an article about ADHD in women. As she read, her hands began to shake. The description of the chattering mind, the hyperfocus followed by complete mental fog, the emotional intensity, the perfectionism masking deep insecurity, it was like reading her own diary. For the first time in her life, she had a name for what she'd been experiencing. She wasn't broken. Today, Barbara runs her own marketing consultancy, working with clients who specifically seek her out for her ADHD-driven creativity, hyperfocus abilities, and out-of-the-box thinking. She's transformed her daily chaos into organized, manageable systems that work with her brain, not against it. Her story isn't unique. Across the world, millions of women are living with undiagnosed or misunderstood ADHD, convinced they're simply not trying hard enough, not organized enough, not disciplined enough. They're wrong. And this book is here to prove it. This book exists for one powerful reason: to guide you through a complete transformation from ADHD shame and chaos to empowerment and clarity. Not through generic advice or one-size-fits-all solutions, but through expert insights specifically tailored to how ADHD presents in women's lives. For too long, ADHD research and treatment have been based on studies of hyperactive boys. Women's presentations, the daydreamers, the overthinkers, the people-pleasers who've learned to hide their struggles behind perfect facades, have been overlooked, misdiagnosed, or dismissed entirely. This book corrects that oversight. You'll discover how to leverage your hidden strengths, to excel in your career and relationships without the exhausting burden of masking who you truly are. You'll learn to transform your daily overwhelm into systems that actually work for your unique brain, while building the authentic confidence that comes from finally understanding and accepting yourself. This transformation happens through 3 key shifts. From chaos to clarity, by developing organizational systems designed specifically for the ADHD brain. From hiding to leveraging your differences as your greatest professional and personal assets. From shame to authentic confidence while navigating a neurotypical world. This book is written specifically for women who have spent years feeling like they're living life on hard mode, wondering why everything seems more difficult for them than for everyone else. You might be incredibly successful on paper, but feel like you're constantly on the verge of being found out as a fraud. Maybe you're recently diagnosed and feeling a mixture of relief and overwhelm. You could be someone who's lived with unrecognized ADHD symptoms for decades, developing elaborate coping mechanisms that have served you well but left you exhausted. If you're tired of generic productivity advice that doesn't work for your brain, this book offers approaches that honor how your mind actually works rather than forcing it into neurotypical molds. What sets this book apart isn't just its focus on women, it's the revolutionary way it approaches ADHD as a strength-based neurodivergent identity rather than a deficit to be managed. Unlike books that focus primarily on childhood ADHD or male presentations, this book addresses the unique ways ADHD manifests in adult women. Your journey begins now. Throughout these pages, you'll encounter real stories from women who've transformed their lives after understanding their ADHD. You'll discover practical tools specifically designed for the female ADHD brain. You'll learn organizational systems that work with your natural patterns of hyperfocus and distractibility. By the end of this journey, you'll have a complete toolkit for transforming daily chaos into manageable systems, leveraging your hidden strengths for success, and building authentic confidence that doesn't depend on masking who you are. The woman you're meant to be, confident, successful, and authentically herself, is waiting on the other side of this transformation. Your ADHD brain isn't broken. It's been waiting for the right instruction manual. This book is that manual. 1. The Invisible Epidemic: Why Smart Women Slip Through the Cracks. Behind the mask of perfect performance. Picture Emily sitting in her corner office, surrounded by color-coded files and multiple coffee cups, appearing to have it all together. Her colleagues see a successful marketing director who never misses a deadline. What they don't see is the 3 a.m. panic sessions, the bathroom breaks where she gives herself pep talks, or the elaborate systems she's created just to remember basic tasks. Emily has become a master performer. Women with ADHD develop sophisticated masking strategies from an early age, learning to hide their symptoms to meet societal expectations of being organized, compliant, and put together. This adaptive response, while protective in the short term, creates a dangerous cycle where their real struggles remain invisible to healthcare providers, educators, and even themselves. The masking phenomenon manifests in several key ways. Social conditioning and gender expectations. Girls are taught to be quiet, organized, and people-pleasing, making hyperactive or disruptive ADHD symptoms less socially acceptable and more likely to be internalized or suppressed. Compensatory behaviors that hide symptoms. High-achieving women develop elaborate coping mechanisms: excessive list-making, over-preparing for meetings, working twice as hard to achieve the same results, that mask their underlying executive function challenges. The exhaustion of constant performance. Maintaining this facade requires enormous mental energy, leading to burnout, anxiety, and depression that often overshadow the underlying ADHD symptoms when seeking help. Dr. Emily, a leading researcher in female ADHD presentation, conducted a study following 200 high-achieving women through their diagnostic journey. She discovered that 85% had developed what she termed adaptive perfectionism, an exhausting cycle of over-preparation and hypervigilance designed to prevent the chaos their ADHD brain naturally creates. Emily, a corporate lawyer in our study, described spending 4 hours preparing for every 1-hour meeting, not because she didn't know the material, but because her brain couldn't trust itself to stay focused without extensive backup plans, Dr. Emily explains. These women become so skilled at compensation that their struggles remain completely invisible to the outside world. This invisible performance takes a devastating toll, setting the stage for understanding how our unique ADHD brains actually function, which we'll explore in the next chapter as we dive into the beautiful chaos upstairs. High-achieving women. Rachel graduated summa cum laude from medical school, completed a prestigious residency, and built a thriving practice. To everyone around her, she embodied success. But behind closed doors, she was drowning. Her home was chaos, she forgot important personal appointments, and she felt like a fraud despite her professional achievements. When she finally sought help for what she thought was anxiety, she was shocked to learn that her lifelong struggles stemmed from ADHD, a condition she'd never considered because she'd always been the smart one. The paradox hits hard for high achievers. The very traits that help women succeed, intelligence, creativity, and determination, often mask ADHD symptoms and delay diagnosis. High-achieving women frequently use their cognitive abilities to compensate for executive function deficits, creating a paradox where their success becomes the barrier to getting help. This phenomenon manifests in several critical ways. Intelligence as a double-edged sword. High IQ allows women to develop workarounds for ADHD challenges, but also means they don't fit the typical struggling in school narrative that leads to early identification. Success despite struggling. Career achievements and academic accomplishments are often used as evidence against ADHD, when in reality they may represent extraordinary effort to overcome neurological differences. Imposter syndrome and self-doubt. The constant internal struggle to maintain performance while battling executive function issues creates deep-seated feelings of being a fraud, leading women to attribute their difficulties to personal failings rather than neurological differences. Rachel, now 42, reflects on her journey to diagnosis. I spent my entire career believing I was lazy and disorganized, despite evidence to the contrary. I thought everyone else just had some secret manual for adulting that I'd missed. When my daughter was diagnosed with ADHD at age 8, I started researching and recognized myself in every symptom description. The relief was overwhelming. Suddenly, my lifelong struggle to keep up with basic life management made sense. I wasn't broken, my brain just worked differently. Her story illustrates how intelligence can both mask and complicate ADHD recognition, particularly in women who've learned to excel in structured environments while struggling with the unstructured demands of daily life. Understanding this unique presentation is crucial as we move forward to explore exactly how your ADHD brain creates this beautiful chaos upstairs. When ADHD hides in plain sight. When James was diagnosed with ADHD in 3rd grade, his symptoms were impossible to ignore. He couldn't sit still, called out answers, and was constantly in motion. His sister Helen, however, sat quietly in the back of the classroom, appearing to pay attention while her mind wandered through elaborate daydreams. She forgot homework, lost assignments, and struggled with time management, but because she wasn't disruptive, no one considered ADHD. It wasn't until Helen was 28 and seeking therapy for anxiety that a perceptive therapist recognized her inattentive symptoms and suggested ADHD evaluation. The gender gap in recognition is striking. The diagnostic criteria for ADHD were developed based primarily on studies of hyperactive boys, creating a narrow understanding that fails to capture how the condition manifests in girls and women. Female ADHD presentation often involves internalized symptoms that are less visible but equally impairing. Key differences in female presentation include inattentive versus hyperactive presentation. Women are more likely to have the inattentive type, characterized by daydreaming, difficulty focusing, and internal restlessness rather than external hyperactivity. Emotional dysregulation and rejection sensitivity. Female ADHD often includes intense emotional responses, people-pleasing behaviors, and extreme sensitivity to criticism that can be misinterpreted as personality traits rather than neurological symptoms. Hormonal influences on symptom presentation. Estrogen fluctuations during puberty, menstruation, pregnancy, and menopause can significantly impact ADHD symptoms, creating patterns that don't align with traditional diagnostic timelines. Consider the contrasting experiences of siblings James and Helen. While James's hyperactive symptoms led to an early diagnosis and support, Helen's inattentive presentation went unrecognized for decades. Beth was always described as a dreamy, creative child, their mother recalls. Teachers said she was bright, but needed to apply herself more. We never connected her forgetfulness and disorganization to ADHD because she was so different from James. Helen's symptoms manifested as chronic lateness, difficulty completing projects despite high intelligence, and an internal sense of chaos that she learned to hide. Her emotional sensitivity was dismissed as being dramatic, and her people-pleasing tendencies were praised as being considerate. It wasn't until she struggled with postpartum depression and executive function challenges that a healthcare provider familiar with female ADHD presentation recognized the underlying neurological differences that had been present all along. When hidden struggles take their toll. Sarah sat in her therapist's office for the 3rd time that year, struggling to explain why she felt so overwhelmed despite having what looked like a successful life. "I feel like I'm constantly failing at being an adult," she confessed. "I can manage complex projects at work, but I can't remember to pay bills or keep my house organized. I must be lazy or broken somehow." What Sarah didn't realize was that years of undiagnosed ADHD had created a cascade of secondary mental health issues: anxiety from constant overwhelm, depression from chronic self-criticism, and shame from feeling perpetually behind her peers. The hidden toll becomes devastating over time. When ADHD goes unrecognized in women, the resulting struggles are often misattributed to character flaws or other mental health conditions, leading to inappropriate treatment and deepening self-doubt. The chronic stress of trying to function with an unsupported ADHD brain creates secondary conditions that can become more prominent than the underlying neurological differences. The cascade effect manifests in several critical ways. Anxiety and depression as secondary conditions. The constant struggle to meet neurotypical expectations without proper support creates chronic stress, leading to anxiety disorders and depression that often become the focus of treatment while ADHD remains unaddressed. Trauma from chronic invalidation. Years of being told they're too sensitive, disorganized, or not living up to their potential creates deep psychological wounds and can lead to complex trauma responses. Relationship and career impacts. Undiagnosed ADHD affects every area of life, from intimate relationships strained by emotional dysregulation and forgotten commitments to career limitations caused by executive function challenges and imposter syndrome. Sarah's journey illustrates the devastating ripple effects of undiagnosed ADHD. By age 35, she had been treated for anxiety, depression, and adjustment disorders, but never felt truly better. "I was on 3 different medications and had tried countless therapies, but nothing addressed the core issue. My brain worked differently, and I needed different strategies, not just more willpower," she explains. Her marriage suffered because her husband interpreted her forgetfulness as not caring, and her career stagnated because she couldn't handle the administrative aspects of leadership roles despite her creative brilliance. The turning point came when her daughter's ADHD diagnosis prompted Sarah to recognize similar patterns in herself, setting the stage for understanding how her beautiful, chaotic brain actually functions. When your brain finally makes sense. Lisa was scrolling through social media when a post about adult ADHD in women stopped her cold. The description of feeling like you're constantly forgetting something important and having great ideas but struggling to follow through felt like someone had been watching her life. For the first time, she considered that her lifelong struggles with organization, time management, and emotional regulation might not be personal failings, but symptoms of a neurodevelopmental condition. That moment of recognition, the sudden shift from self-blame to self-understanding, marked the beginning of her journey toward proper diagnosis and support. Recognition changes everything. Many women experience an awakening moment when they first recognize ADHD symptoms in themselves, often triggered by their child's diagnosis, social media content, or learning about female ADHD presentation. These moments of recognition can be both validating and overwhelming, as years of self-criticism suddenly reframe as neurological differences. The awakening process typically involves common triggers for self-recognition. Women often first consider ADHD when their children are diagnosed, when they encounter accurate information about female presentation, or during major life transitions that overwhelm their coping mechanisms. The relief and grief cycle. Initial relief at having an explanation is often followed by grief for years of unnecessary struggle and self-blame, creating a complex emotional journey toward self-acceptance. Key signs that warrant evaluation. Chronic overwhelm despite high intelligence, difficulty with executive functions like time management and organization, emotional sensitivity, and a persistent sense of underachieving despite significant effort. The moment Lisa read that social media post, everything clicked into place. "I had always wondered why basic adulting felt so much harder for me than it seemed for everyone else," she reflects. "I was successful in my career, but constantly anxious about dropping balls in my personal life. Learning about ADHD felt like finding the missing piece of a puzzle I'd been working on my whole life." Her awakening led to a comprehensive evaluation that confirmed inattentive ADHD, and for the first time, she began to understand her brain's unique wiring. The diagnosis didn't change who I was, but it changed how I saw myself, from someone who was failing at life to someone who had been trying to use the wrong manual for her particular type of brain. This recognition sets the stage for understanding exactly how that beautiful, chaotic brain of yours actually works, which we'll explore in detail next. 2. Your brain on ADHD, the beautiful chaos upstairs. Your brain's brilliant newsroom chaos. Picture your brain as a bustling newsroom where every story feels urgent, every detail seems important, and multiple broadcasts run simultaneously. This isn't chaos, it's your ADHD brain's magnificent operating system working exactly as designed. The ADHD brain architecture. Understanding your unique wiring. Neurobiologist Dr. Russell Barkley has spent decades peering into ADHD brains through advanced imaging technology, and his findings are revolutionary. When researchers show people brain scans, they're amazed to see that ADHD brains aren't broken. They're beautifully, structurally different from neurotypical brains in fascinating ways. Your prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO, develops more slowly and has different connectivity patterns than typical brains. The basal ganglia, your brain's gear-shifting mechanism, operates with less available dopamine, making traditional motivation strategies feel ineffective. These aren't deficits. They're variations that create both daily challenges and extraordinary capabilities that most people never develop. Key architectural differences. Prefrontal cortex variations. Your brain's executive center has fewer dopamine receptors, making conventional focus techniques less effective, but creating space for more creative, non-linear thinking patterns that generate innovative solutions. Enhanced connectivity patterns. ADHD brains show increased connectivity between regions that don't typically communicate, leading to those brilliant connections and breakthrough insights that seem to come from nowhere. Active default mode network. Your brain's resting state is more active, meaning you're constantly processing background information that others automatically filter out. Exhausting, but also the source of incredible pattern recognition abilities. Susan always felt embarrassed by her seemingly scattered thinking, until she learned about her brain's unique architecture during her diagnosis process. She discovered that her tendency to jump between ideas wasn't a character flaw. It was her brain making sophisticated connections that others couldn't see or understand. When she started her marketing agency, this same scattered thinking became her greatest professional asset. Her brain's ability to hold multiple concepts simultaneously allowed her to see campaign possibilities that linear thinkers missed entirely. Her brain wasn't broken or defective. It was running different, more sophisticated software that the world desperately needs. As we'll explore in the next chapter about navigating diagnosis, understanding your brain's architecture is the first step toward getting proper support. Your brain's motivation mystery decoded. Remember how Chapter 1 explored why smart women often feel like they're failing at simple tasks that others handle effortlessly? The answer lies in understanding your brain's unique motivation system, which operates on completely different principles than the neurotypical world expects. Picture dopamine as your brain's internal currency, except you're living in an economy with a completely different exchange rate than everyone else. While neurotypical brains get steady dopamine deposits from routine tasks and delayed rewards, your ADHD brain operates more like a high-stakes casino, requiring bigger payoffs to feel motivated and struggling with the neurotypical world's save-your-pennies approach to satisfaction. The ADHD motivation ecosystem. Interest-based motivation. Your brain literally cannot manufacture motivation for boring tasks the way neurotypical brains can. You need novelty, urgency, interest, or passion to kickstart your dopamine system. This isn't laziness, it's pure neurobiology at work. Hyperfocus versus hypofocus. When your brain finds something dopamine-worthy, you can focus with laser intensity for hours, often forgetting to eat or use the bathroom. When it doesn't find sufficient reward potential, even simple tasks feel impossible to start. The dopamine crash. After periods of intense focus or stimulation, your brain experiences a dopamine dip, leading to that familiar feeling of mental exhaustion and complete inability to tackle even the simplest daily tasks. This explains why you might feel completely energized while planning a complex project, but utterly drained by the thought of filing paperwork. It's not a character flaw. Madison spent years believing she was fundamentally lazy because she could write for 12 hours straight when an article excited her, but couldn't bring herself to do laundry for weeks. Learning about her dopamine system transformed her internal dialogue from harsh self-criticism to practical problem-solving strategies. She started pairing mundane activities with engaging podcasts, setting micro deadlines with small rewards, and gamifying routine tasks with apps and timers. Her productivity increased dramatically, and more importantly, her self-shame decreased significantly. Understanding your motivation system is crucial preparation for the next chapter, where we'll explore how to communicate these neurobiological realities to healthcare providers who may not understand ADHD in women. When your brain's boss needs backup. Building on the masking behaviors we explored in Chapter 1, let's examine what's actually happening inside your brain when those perfectly crafted coping strategies start to crumble under pressure. Think of executive function as your brain's personal assistant, except yours called in sick most days, and when they do show up, they're juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle. Executive functions include working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control, which form the foundation of daily task management. For ADHD brains, these skills need external scaffolding to function optimally. That's perfectly normal and completely manageable once you understand the system. Your executive function reality. Working memory challenges. You might forget what you were saying mid-sentence or lose track of multi-step instructions completely. This isn't a character flaw or sign of low intelligence. Your brain's temporary storage system works differently and needs external support systems. Time blindness. Your internal clock runs on now and not now time, making it nearly impossible to estimate how long tasks will take or accurately feel the passage of time. This creates chronic lateness and deadline struggles that have absolutely nothing to do with respect or caring. Task initiation and switching. Starting tasks, especially boring ones, and switching between different activities requires significantly more mental energy for your brain than neurotypical brains need. The common just do it advice falls completely flat because your brain needs specific strategies to overcome activation energy. Patricia was a brilliant surgeon whose operating room skills were legendary among colleagues, but she couldn't manage her personal finances or remember to pay bills on time. The contrast frustrated her until she realized that her surgical success came from extensive external structure, detailed protocols, comprehensive checklists, and coordinated team support systems. When she applied the same systematic approach to her personal life, creating automated bill payments, visual reminder systems, and breaking complex household tasks into manageable micro-steps, her home life became as organized and efficient as her professional environment. Understanding these executive function differences is crucial as we move into Chapter 3, where we'll explore how to effectively communicate these neurobiological realities to healthcare providers who may dismiss your struggles. When hormones hijack your ADHD brain. Now that you understand your brain's unique architecture and motivation system, there's another crucial factor that affects how your ADHD symptoms show up day by day, yet it's rarely discussed in traditional ADHD resources. Endocrinologist Dr. Michelle Mowbray has uncovered a crucial piece of the ADHD puzzle that affects roughly half the population but is consistently overlooked in medical settings. Hormonal fluctuations dramatically impact ADHD symptoms throughout women's lives. Estrogen acts like a volume knob for ADHD, she explains in her groundbreaking research. When levels drop during menstruation, perimenopause, or menopause, every ADHD symptom gets turned up significantly. Understanding this connection helps explain why your symptoms might feel completely manageable some weeks and utterly overwhelming during others. The hormone-ADHD connection. Menstrual cycle impact. During the luteal phase, which occurs post-ovulation, when estrogen levels drop sharply, executive function decreases noticeably, emotional regulation becomes significantly harder, and focus feels